Hello and welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I'm the host of this weekly show, which is a discussion show about all things Dungeons and Dragons. I've been gaming for 40 years. It's hard to believe every time I say that, but I love tabletop role playing games. Specifically, I mostly do Dungeons and Dragons, but I've played a whole plethora of other games. I bring some of that experience and some of that knowledge into this discussion. But really, what I want to do is hear from you and hear about some of the experiences, some of the suggestions, some of the insight that you might have about helping to form a great Dungeons and Dragons game. So I hope you'll participate in the discussion today. Hello and welcome everybody to the stream today. I'm going to go and do some preparation for my 10th session now of my Rime of the Frostmaiden game. It's really been a great weekly game. It is not streamed. I get questions about that occasionally. And maybe I'll stream a game in the future. I'll definitely stream some one-shots in 2021. But this is a personal game. What this show is about, though, is about talking about the theory crafting behind developing games for Dungeons and Dragons. What are the important elements of putting a real world game together? I don't want to talk about things in theory. I'm trying to stick to a conversation as it applies to games, to get them out the door, to get them played, to keep players engaged, because games are messy things. And all this advice online that you get typically is in the realm of the perfect. In the perfect world, if you just say this or do this, everything works out. But once a plan meets players, everything is off, and that's the excitement about Dungeons and Dragons. That's the excitement about running games. So that's what the conversation is about here today. I hope you'll join me in the conversation and lend your voice. So a couple of things I want to talk about that are resources that I hope you'll find useful for your Dungeons and Dragons prep. I do have now a blog. It is up on optionalrule.com or www.optionalrule.com. Oh no, my goodness. I can see my own stream. So I turned that off. But yeah, so on here, I'm posting content that I'm developing. Now, I don't want to flood it with all the back content I have because I have a ton of it, but I'll be posting stuff that's relevant now and useful tools that I've developed over time. I've posted a couple of NPCs there and so forth. One of the things I want to point out here that actually might be used to any game master or players here is I compiled this list of character voices reference. If you're like me, a lot of time I do voices in game. As a game master, I do voices. I know that can be a little controversial. Not everybody does it. You can do direct first person voices. You can do third person voices. So I like to have a way to have a list. Frameworks are really important to me because it keeps me from getting repetitious. It keeps me from going always to my safe bet. And over time, I can just do the same thing over and over again. So I want to have a way to break that up as a DM. So this is a great way. I compiled this from different lists for actors, mostly around the web, about different voice types. Some of them are repetitive, but just doing I created a 1 to 100. I compiled 100 of these, so you can roll well, it's actually not 100, but it fits into a D100 table. I think it's about 50 voices, but you can go ahead and roll some percentile dice and make a note of it on your NPC sheet and say what kind of voice they have, and that helps me be consistent with NPCs going forward and develop some variation of dead voices or flat voices or guttural or high pitched, and not go to it. Some advice I have about NPC voices, I've been doing them for a long time. My friends and my wife has mentioned that I have a quick retort. So I have a quick comeback. Part of that is because I grew up in New Jersey in the US, and we're known for having quick retorts. But the other part is just I've been a game master for so long that I reply as NPCs in different voices, and it's improved my wit over time, really. So where this merges with how you can keep your notes is I have one of the other posts I've made to this blog, and I use this format for NPCs. I don't flesh all NPCs out every time I go back to the front page. That comes up. So and this is art I found on I think it was ArtStation. I credit the author here, by the way. I'm trying to be real careful about. So I, like a lot of people, I pull art from around the web, and I always try to credit the author, the original artist, when I come in. But this rest of the creation is mine. So So in my NPCs, if I have a meaty NPC description, this is an NPC I use for my Rime of the Frostmaiden game, I always have a section called voice. So in this character's case, it's very, voices strained and raspy voice that makes it difficult to speak. She prefers to use crude sign language. That keeps me consistent over time. Now, I don't do a blog post for every character. If we look, I use Notion SO, which lots of ways to keep your notes for a game. I tend to use this though, but you can see I have a bunch of NPCs, and they normally have a voice listed just so I can be sort of consistent. We'll see with Arnold Beats, which is an NPC voice, like a half singing voice. And he's sort of a noble. Again, this is art I pulled from around the web, although this is not public facing. So before we get into it, by the way, lots and massive spoilers for Rime of the Frostmaiden in this game. No way around it. I'm going to do a lot of Rime of the Frostmaiden content this time around. So just be aware of that. If you're one of the players in my campaign, shoo until I'll let you know when you can sort of look at streams from here. I think the first 5 streams from this campaign, all those plot devices have come out, or at least if I spoke about future plots, I've either abandoned them and I'm using something else. So anyway, I think these voice rules can really be helpful for you. So I hope you'll look at it on optionalrules.com and take a peek there. One of the other things I'm beginning here, and I know this voice always starts, I embedded my live stream so it's messing me up a little bit. But anyway, I'm doing Rime of the Frostmaiden remixes. This weekly stream, as I'm doing it now, the current campaign I'm running is Rime of the Frostmaiden. I did Dragon of Icespire Peak prior to this. I did not stream prep for that. But I'm taking, and if you've ever joined me for these streams, I heavily remix the elements, new plot lines, new NPCs. Last session, I really reskinned all of the NPCs. I posted them to my Twitter account. So you can see them, but those are remixes of the plots, the reasoning behind it, and I'll be posting those in a series to my blog. So you can, the one I'm going to start out with is the setup for the 10 towns, and my remix of a scenario called Cold Hearted Killer, which a lot of people have, and a scenario called Froming Mugs, which a lot of people have talked a lot about the balance issues of that. Some of that remix was to address that, but again, I'll say this because there's a lot of commentary about a misunderstanding, I think, about what official modules are, what their role is, and what they're supposed to do. Now, there's things about any module that is not ideal, but Rime of the Frostmaiden's caught a little heat for this, I think unnecessarily. What you have to do is understand that modules and all official content, by its nature, is supposed to be kind of milquetoast, kind of agnostic. It's not giving you this strong point of view. You develop that as a game master. So remixing is kind of a necessary thing to do, and I think that's a good conversation for all of us to get into who run D&D, because it's not the rule set that's the game, it's the session that's the game. So we take this rule set and these sort of seeds that we get from official modules, and then we jazz them up. We put our own spin on them. That's what keeps tabletop role-playing games fresh. So I'll be putting up next week, I'll put up my first sort of intro to the supply lines and a couple of those bundled adventures that I did first. And I'm way ahead, obviously. I'm on something called the Cauldron Cave. We just finished that up. So I'll put my remix for that up in a few weeks. But each week I'll be putting up a remix for anybody looking for Rime of the Frostmaiden and how those campaigns got remixed. So watch the blog for that. All right, so where I am at this week is I want to prepare for session 10 of Rime of the Frostmaiden. Where the players they are at 3rd level, and I am trying to create this sense of progression at a few checkpoints. At the transition from 2nd to 3rd, I want that climax was a confrontation with actually the Cold Hearted Killer remix that I'll be doing was a climax with a barbarian tribe trying to seek power and do some rituals, and it sort of let them feel that transition from 2nd to 3rd level. The next transition I really want them to feel is from 3rd to 4th level, and that's going to be 2 adventures, so they're midway through. They just did this Cauldron Caves adventure, which was, they've got a patron now, which is an artificer up in the north, who told them to go up to this location for an ancient rival of his who has stolen a magic item and has this cauldron that can help feed the people of the 10 towns who are starving. So it was a great adventure. I mean, they really, if you've joined me in previous streams, I spent 1.5 streams rebalancing all of the NPCs from that. And oh my gosh, thank God I did. That encounter was as thin as you could possibly get. The players were down to, every player was down to just a few hit points. A few went up and down. And oh my gosh, I really, really encourage you to look out for that remix that I put up, or look at those previous streams. I posted the remix, not reskinned, I really remade them. The Frost Giant skeleton I turned into something called Bone Warrior Giant, and the hag, she was a sea hag in the module. I recreated her as a winter hag, a custom hag. I posted both of those PDF sheets, or images of them anyway, to my Twitter. So I hope you'll check that out. That I think is useful. So the core was, so I reduced the burst damage on the part of the giant because it was enough burst damage to kill a player outright. And for the hag, I gave her more flavorful abilities, confounding abilities like fog cloud and things like that, but took down some of her combat abilities because I knew the players were going to come out of the fight with the Frost Giant skeleton, or the Bone Giant Guardian as I changed it, without many resources left, and I didn't want them to get into another fight, and thank God I did, because it really, really held that together. So that's an important part for game masters to realize, is the dungeon progresses organically. This is really unique to D&D. One of the things players try to do all the time that I think hamstrings them or puts game masters in a bad position. And actually, I'm going to pull up my virtual tabletop and show you what I mean by this discussion. So the players, after they get done with a really hard fight, the first thing they're looking to do is score a short rest or a long rest, or do something that lets them recover hit points, which is understandable. But in this case, what happened was, and this is a Foundry virtual tabletop, by the way. I really enjoy this tabletop. I run my own server for it. It's working out really well. But this room right here, I think you can see my mouse cursor. That's where they faced off against the Frost Giant Guardian. It's 50 feet away from the hag. And one of the big mistakes modules make is they put these tough fights right next to each other. Players naturally do want to have a rest, but there's no practical way for them to have it, because in this scenario, for instance, the hag knows there was a giant fight because there was big roaring and a huge skeleton fighting. So what's she going to do? Sit there and let them take a long rest? And this is something that repeats itself as a problem for players. If you look at Lost Mines of Phandelver, the early adventures around Cragmaw Hideout, the players often try to take a long rest, like right outside where the NPCs are. So they'd be attacked in the middle of the night. It's not a fault of the module. It's a driver that the system rules drive. So you have to be aware of how these systems do it. So I gave them some heads up that the hag was coming that way, reminded them they had some healing potions, and they were able to get into that fight with a little bit of recovery, but not much, and especially without being surprised. So I don't actually have a solution for that, other than when you design your dungeons, if I was going to have to, in retrospect, I would have rebalanced all of these NPCs, and I would have taken the Frost Giant encounter from here, maybe up to this cave up here where it's less. It would have happened earlier. It would have given the players some distance from the hag and given them an opportunity to take that short rest, but not a long one. So I don't know. That might have changed things significantly. But anyway, the players survived, and it was good enough. They got a ton of treasure, so it was a big thing. They got back to town. Now they brought back, the MacGuffin here was this thing called the Cauldron of Plenty, which can make lots of food for the 10 towns. The players get back. Might as well use the map since I have it up. The players get back to East Haven, which is close to where they're at, and they are Icewind Dale map. Here we go. And they return with this cauldron, and they turn it over to the town itself. Here, the players come out of here for some reason that got rotated. But this is where the Cauldron Cave was. They're back at East Haven now after another day of journey, and they've turned it over to the town official, the town crier, or town speaker. That's worked out great for them. But now, having had an intense combat scenario, which was, and really kind of the last two were survival. The last two sessions were the one previous to the last one was survival based, and they had a fight with some harpies, but it was isolated in the wilderness, survival and discovery exploration based. So there's not a lot of role-playing opportunities other than the players themselves. Then the last session, they went into the Cauldron Caves. It's heavy combat. Almost the entire session was that fight, or the two fights, and now they're back at East Haven. So I want to run pacing-wise and a role-playing encounter, and I want to. Then really, what I have to figure out today is what additional plots do I have? Welcome to the stream, by the way. If you're here, please go ahead and drop a comment, chat, whatever you have. I'm happy to hear your feedback. And answer any questions related to this module or anything else. All right, so back to this. So now they've gotten back to East Haven. They have this cauldron with them. The town official really has received them like conquering heroes, and they want to now go through like a meager feast. They'll have a lot of mead, but not a lot of food, because the setup here is the 10 towns are starving, and I need to now progress the plot past that, and we're at a big fork point. So this is going to be a little tough for me as a DM on what I want to do, because I have several things I want to fit in. First, I want to get them some breather time to interact with the other groups, but use this as an opportunity to express some additional information through role playing, because I hate as a DM just reading walls of text. So I love for people to hear about additional opportunities for adventure from NPCs, but I'm a little stymied because I don't actually quite know how to do that. Way I prepare adventures is I use this technique called the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master by a guy named Sly Flourish. Oh, actually, Mike Shea is his name, but Sly Flourish is he goes by online, and it's a great technique. It sort of lists things out per session. I've added some to this. So in his way, he adds the players. Then I add this thing about what themes to remind myself to go back to these central themes. I added a section for what are my central plot lines. He has a section for strong starts, so I'm going to have this meager feast to celebrate the Cauldron of Plenty. Then he lists out potential scenes. I'm in the middle of doing that. Secrets and clues. As you can see, I don't have a lot here because I cleared out all the ones from the previous session. They're all on the table now, and I need a whole new set of secrets and clues. And these are things that the players could discover. It doesn't tell you how they discover it, although I'm going to put a pin on that because I'll come back to it in a second. But it's the things that they could discover, what's going on in the background of the world itself that's sort of progressing as they move along through it. So that's what I want to kind of do and focus on, the sort of how do I tie these plot threads together. Now I know what I want to do. How do I make these interesting for the players becomes my challenge, my next challenge as a GM. And that's where I'm at. So I can tell you one encounter I definitely want to have. So this is a payoff, and callback is something that is really useful in D&D. So if you add in a progressed plot line that players thought was closed or had encountered previously, and now they're re-encountering it with the outcome of their actions. That's a powerful technique. It's called a callback in a lot of scenarios that lends a lot to the spirit of a game. So that's where I'm going with my next thing. So several sessions ago, I took the Beautiful Mind scenario in the module, and all that was basically a ghost hiding out in a kobold's body that wanted to possess a more powerful mage, and I transformed that, made it part of the Cold-Hearted Killer remix that I'll post to my blog here in the next week or two. But the basic line was that ghost was recreated by the party of the Cold-Hearted Killer to get information from it because they were a scholar, a mage in real life. So they performed a ritual that brought it back, its ghost back, and cut a deal with it that if he pays, if the ghost tells them information about this tomb they were looking for, they would tie its spirit to the world and let it live out as a ghost in the world. So it did that. It tied its spirit to this journal. These are all my ads. This journal that it's obsessed with, the ghost is obsessed with. And so when the players encounter it, they figure out it's a ghost. It possessed one of the players to try to get away. I won't go through the whole thing, but ended up being this chase scene that gets to this edge of this pit into the Underdark, where it was trying to jump to bring the player to its death so it could get away into the Underdark, figuring it could possess somebody down there sooner or later. It couldn't get away. It was held back by the players, and it chucked its book over the edge, which its soul was bound to, which brought its spirit with it. I set one of the abilities of this reskin of this spirit that it can't be more than 30 feet away from its journal. So the spirit leaps out of the body of the player it's possessed as the players held it down, takes the journal, goes plummeting into the Underdark. The spirit follows it, and they've lost track of it, and they got out, and they think they're done with it. But what I want now is we're weeks later down in the timeline of the game. I want to do a callback. I want the so what I have in mind is, and this is good for secrets and clues. So I have to look up this NPC's name, by the way, because I don't remember it. Beautiful Mind. There we go. That was related to a city called Tourmaline. And so if I go down to the ghost, it was the ghost of Great Little Adventure. I'm ignoring a lot. Janth, that's right. The ghost of Janth had possessed this cobalt, but now it's free. So I want to have the ghost of Janth return in a possessed body, probably a drow. If you have a suggestion from the Underdark, so I want somebody from the Underdark who's mysterious, kind of exotic for the region. Actually, drow wouldn't be. I don't need them to be exotic. Why would I say that? That's stupid. Exotic doesn't have a lot of usefulness in this scenario. I want them to be something that stands out. That's what I want them to be, something that notices them. So the players, in the midst of their celebration to having returned this cauldron, they'll look and there'll be one figure in the midst that's just sort of brooding in the corner, staring at the mage player that it now blames, that it wants the mage's body because it wants to be it's its vehicle to live again. And so it's going to just stare at them. It'll be like a drow or something else. So if you have a suggestion for something that could be in the towns and basically ignored, but stand out enough for the players to notice it, go ahead and drop that in the chat. I would love to hear your suggestion. But until I hear something else, I'm going to use a drow. So a drow will be looking at this player character, kind of stalk them through the night in celebration, maybe even engage them in conversation in this weird, passive-aggressive, resentful way that tips the hat that there's something going on there. And I want to create a small moment of tension. I don't want a big encounter that's an hour. Maybe it wrestles with the player that night, attacks them in their sleep, tries to possess them, and they realize it was this ghost from before, and it's this oh crap moment. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So how do I list that? So down in secrets, I just have in East Haven, I have the ghost of Janth has possessed a drow and reemerged. I don't know how to spell that. Looking for Nim, who's the player character, to take revenge. So yeah, that'll be great. I've already set up the MacGuffin that this NPC like holds the book and needs it, and sort of obsessive OCD relationship with this journal of it has. So they won't see that at first. It'll be in a pack, but when this drow confronts the player character, maybe by getting into their room or something, they'll pull out the book and they'll begin to sort of obsessively rub it or fiddle with it. So that'll be a great little beat in the middle of the adventure. One of the other things that I've set up is the next set of adventures. And this is, again, if you have recommendations, comments, thoughts, I would love for you to just sort of post them on the tavern wall if you're looking down on the comment section, if you're seeing this later, or down in the chat if you're looking at it now. But what I really need to do is, again, what I was talking about, I want these milestones. So the general plot lines in the back, that's one of the other things I do. Plot threads. This one here, this is sort of abandoned, but I'll get to the ones that are sort of relevant for here. So the relevant ones that we have here are, and what I do with these milestones is these milestones are intended to scale up the player's view of the world and their power level. So their first one was a very localized, there's a single party out there. That was this Cold Hearted Killer remix that I'll post. There's a single party out there going and sort of murdering people and doing these small individual evil deeds that affect individual people, and that's a scale that they're at first, second, and now they're third. They're getting into sort of more of a mix of the higher end political stuff in the community, so they're at the community level, and by the time they get into tier 2, it should be Icewind Dale wide element. So let's go down from individual people up to sort of maybe towns or the area, and then move on from there. So what I want them to do from here is get into so there's this Charterland Syndicate plot. So I've completely rewritten this. In the original module, there's this Zodarok Sunblight plot line, which comes in chapter 3, which I don't like, because not because it's a bad module, but because it involves this Charterland dragon, this construct, like a Mecha Godzilla dragon that goes down into town. And I don't want to do that because I just did a dragon in my last campaign. So I don't want to double down on that and do it again and again and again. So instead, what I've set is there's a organized crime syndicate basically trying to take over the leadership, the speakership, which is the governing bodies of the 10 towns. They've been trying to put their candidates out there. There's one who's actually gotten into office in the city of Targos, and the others, every town that the players have visited, they are confronted with a town speaker who has strong opposition from some other candidate to create a faction within town that is trying to sort of take over but has not been successful so far. So the stakes I'm setting for the players are, does the 10 towns stay community focused, or do the 10 towns become this exploitive, heartless, evil syndicate that's corrupt? That's the stakes that we set down here. And the way that they are trying to do it is the 10 towns are bringing in supplies through this mountain pass every month at the new moon. That's how the party got into the region to begin with. And the Chartland Syndicate are trying to cut off those supplies, and trying to set up a supply line of their own in conjunction with the Duragar. So I want to replace this plot of the Duragar having a Chartland dragon with this plot of the Duragar conspiring with the Chartland Syndicate to basically lock down the 10 towns themselves. So because what the Duragar's angle in this is, they use the Icewind Dale is the only place you can get this crystal called Chartland, which I've said sort of grows like a crystal. It actually grows and replicates itself all around the area. So they've figured out a way to turn Chartland into a kind of gunpowder to fuel their war against Mithril Hall. So that's their angle. They don't care if Orreal kills everybody and locks. They just want to shore up this area as a supply line. The Chartland Syndicate, they're short-sighted. They think this is eventually going to pass, and they just want to secure themselves as leader for the profit that they get from selling Chartland or other resources that come out. So that's where they're set up. So I need to create this plot, and I don't know how to do it because I've teased this, but I don't know how to close the deal right now. And every game master, I don't want to do this J.J. Abrams thing where I tease it and then can't close the deal. So what I want to do is I've teased it. The players know at this point that the Chartland Syndicate is interested in undercutting the supply line. They know that the dwarves, the Duragar dwarves, are trying to cut off the supply line, and at the same time they're bringing in supplies. So the next plot of this is that where's my boundary? So the dwarves are using East Haven as a main choke point to bring their supplies in from the mountain. So they bring these supplies in from here, goes into East Haven in these wagons or sleighs, really, and they distribute them out here. So one of Zerdarok's sons is living in a fairy house, and that's another remix that I'm doing. In the original module, I think that they have some Duragar living in one of the fairy houses out here on the frozen lake. I think it's right here, actually, and they're there just looking for Chartland and stealing things in general, which seems a sort of a dry plot line to me. So instead, he's there coordinating the supply deliveries to their allies in the Chartland Syndicate, and also looking for Chartland and things like that. So the question becomes, how do the players discover this? I think this could be good. I want this to be a bit of a Scooby-Doo scenario, an investigation one, and not heavy combat. So the stakes here are really discovering what's going on, uncovering the plot, and sort of undoing this as a supply line. So I don't want to have too many subplots here, which is a big weakness of mine as a GM. As you can see, I already have these plot threads. These first couple have kind of been closed out. But yeah, I still want to do something here. So I've also remixed Orreal's motivations here. Because that's going to work decoded to that's the ultimate climax of this module. What Orreal is trying to do in my remix of it is she's trying to perform a conjunction of planes in Icewind Dale. So it's an area where all of these things overlap, because she wants to basically create her own Shadowfell or pocket dimension or something like that, where she just wants to get away from this all. So she's trying to pull in the Grey Wastes from Hades, I think it is, an overlapping area of Frostfell and an elemental plane, Karngath from Gehenna, elements of the Shadowfell, Grey Waste, and have them overlap here. So Yeah, so the why am I bringing that up? This is ultimately where they want to head. Everything else is that is happening is just how people are either short-sighted or poorly dealing with this. So the plot that they're at now is the dwarves want the place, don't care if the place dies. The Duragar, because they just want it as a source for Charterland. The Charterland Syndicate wants to use this as an opportunity to take over the 10 towns, and they're just short-sighted. So I want really the three plots I want to have are the return of this spirit that I just talked about earlier. The second plot is really, I guess, the combination. The second plot is the Charterland Syndicate and undoing them. So that's what I want to be the coda of the fourth, the level 4, that transition from 3 to 4. So I don't know how to quite do this, but what I want that coda to be is free up the immediate danger to the 10 towns. There's this long-term danger of Orwell's Night, but the immediate danger that I set up is every month the town has to all of the towns have to make this big sacrifice, or if they don't, this blizzard turns up that kills a few tens of people in each town. So instead, they've gone through and some of them sacrifice food, some of them sacrifice heat, but the big towns have to sacrifice a life. And so that's this persistent thing that the players are feeling the clock ticking on. So I want to remove this clock ticking feeling to free the players up once they get past 4th level to move more broadly in the region. Right now, they've just been bouncing around between the 10 towns. So I've gotten through a little bit. They have a plot now where they're supplying more food to the 10 towns through the recovery of this cauldron. They are understanding that there's this plot with the Charterland Syndicate. So the next stage is to really undo this plot. And I know the pieces I want on the board for this, but I still need to figure out how I'm going to tie this all together. So the pathway to do that for my players are to expose the smuggling line, not really smuggling, but this other alternate supply line that the Charterland Syndicate is using to undermine the speakers of the 10 town. And it'll be interesting. Do the players want to? This is a role-playing challenge. Do the players want to shut that line down? I mean, they're getting food. It's honest food. It's just their motivation isn't honest. So, do the players care? Maybe the people of the 10 town themselves don't care about this Charterland. They're happy to let these dwarves get all the Charterland they want. Or do the players just take the stand and on the principle of it, deny the people of 10 towns food? So I think that's what's at stake. It's an interesting role-playing challenge, and I think the players will come. So I have to figure out a way to tip that hat. So I want something to happen where the players get mentioned something about the wagons, and I still don't know quite how to do that. So the players know that these wagons are coming into town, that Charterland Syndicate are getting, that they have markings on them that look like they came through the Underdark. And again, they're sleighs, really. They can be converted back and forth to sleighs or wagons. So they know it's happening. They just don't know where it's coming from. So at some point, I want to have somebody mention to them something about the wagons, or see, I know what I'll do. The players will see some of the wagons that they saw before. So I have to put this in the potential scenes. So plot threads, potential scenes. So East Haven Ferry disrupting the Duragar potential scenes. So players see a wagon they know with dwarven markings in the market that's just coming from the snow. That's just... And that's what I'll do. So yeah, so that'll tease it. They'll do some investigation. Now, where this goes, this is an interesting part of this way of doing it. It's a compromise between plot driven and sandboxy. Railroad. I don't like railroad, but I like the players to choose. They'll be able to see this. They can choose to follow up on it, but I don't know how they're going to do it or if they're going to do it. So so I have to do a bunch of potential scenes here, because there's end of last session. One of the other things I used was this cutscene based narrative driven. I don't use that often, but I like to sprinkle different techniques in. So as the party got back with this cauldron, they were having the start of this celebration. They had heard some people debating about where this cauldron goes and where it doesn't go. So I cut narratively to something the characters didn't see, because I don't do this often, but it was an effective technique. The players know the town of Targos is where the main Charterland Syndicate headquarters is. So I cut to and describe these ruffians sort of arms crossed leaning against things together. looking at this argument happening about the Cauldron of Plenty, looking to each other with these knowing glances, and then they just get on these dog sleds and they all head out over these roads towards the town of Targos, disappearing into the distance. And that alone was enough to set the stage that the players are going to have trouble, that Targos is interested in this, and there's some shenanigans brewing. So I think that's the most rich plot thing that I think I've set the players up for. If I teased that and didn't do anything with it, it would land rather flat. So I don't know where the players are going to go with that, though. They might question around town. If they do, I'll use as an opportunity to bring back this East Haven Ferry thing. If they don't, they might choose to go to Targos and do some investigation. So if they've gone there, I'm saying that Targos is having this sort of meeting of the minds. They've pulled in all of their conspiracy folks into conspiracy to see if they can think of a way to the next stage for them is to attempt to steal the cauldron. Plans to steal the cauldron. Meeting is a plan to steal the cauldron. And then the other place I want to send them to is up north. Kier Koning is not Kier Koning. Kier Dunavar is there's an adventure with some of the Arcane Brotherhood held up there. What I ultimately want to do, the two plot threads, the two balls of twine they want to untie by the 4th level is undo the Chartland Syndicate as a direct threat, and then discover that there's a spirit called what am I calling it? It's based on northern spirits. I really try to avoid using known cultural references, but it's hard just because I'm worried I just don't want to imply too much. So there's in most northern cultures, Scandinavian, Russian, Native American, there's a northern spirit that kind of consumes, hunts, and eats people. In Northern American traditions, it's called the Wendigo. In Scandinavian tradition, they have something similar called a bok. And it's always this fear of this other stranger that you might meet on the road that consumes people but can never quite have its hunger satisfied. And what I'm saying is, since our reel is pulling together, that's why I was trying to bring that up before. Now I remember. Since our reel is pulling together these planes to have a conjunction, I want the mage to understand that all of these spirits from different planes are beginning to appear in Icewind Dale, creating a threat to the environment. So one of them is this, I just named it an Ilgobok, which is the spirit of one of these planes. I'll say it's a spirit of one of the planes. I'll figure it out later which one. But the thing that will catch his eye is it doesn't normally reside in the prime material plane, but somehow it's here. That's what's causing the hurricane, the blizzard that happens once a month. And if the town sacrifices lives and it can eat them and eat the food and do all this other stuff, it will be satisfied and not cause the blizzard. So if they kill this spirit, it will stop the danger of the blizzards, and the players are free now. The 10 towns have a teeny bit of breather room, and the players can feel free to go about their business around Greater Icewind Dale to set up for what is later going to be a breaking of the Durgar dwarves hold on the region, and they're sort of attacking the supply lines and trying to control the region, and then eventually the setup is to go after Auril herself and shut her down and break her hold on the region. So that's the plot. And I just have to get the players from where I am to where they are. So the next stage is to realize that the Chartland Syndicate can be broken up. They can expose their shenanigans by exposing their plot to steal this Cauldron of Plenty, and it can expose their conspiracy with the Durgar dwarves and break the supply line coming in. So that's what's at stake for this next set of adventures. I also want to shift the player. I rotate. This is another thing DMs balance. I have each player has their own subplot within here, and I've been rotating between it. The first couple of adventures focused on the Mantle of the Wolf, who's this barbarian character from the Ragged Nomads. That wrapped up with this Cold-Hearted Killer remix that I'll talk about later. The one I just wrapped up is Recovery of Family Honor. Rias, the paladin, her grandmother's shield was recovered in the Cauldron Caves, so now she's got sort of a step forward in her plot. The next one I want to go is the character Nim. He's got this subplot where if he kills if he kills a being with magic, there's a 1 in 5 chance that creature will come back as an undead. However, if he kills a being with necromantic energy, there's a 100% chance they come back because he's cursed by Orcus. I actually don't know where I'm going to go with that. I may never resolve that. I might just let him discover it and let it be a problem he has to deal with. But the other is this Arcane Brotherhood. He came to this region trying to discover what the Arcane Brotherhood are looking for. So I have to figure out some way to tease that the Arcane Brotherhood knows about this conjunction of the spheres. They're here to study it, to get some sort of collegiate type study or something in the mages sort of in the mages realm, and they know and have the information about this this what I call Ilgobach, to be able to kill it. So they have. And I want to get, there's a mage, so that's what I'll do. So there's a mage held up in Caer Dineval. That's where they'll discover some rumor that there's a mage studying there, that it has to lead. I don't want to tip my hat before they go. I just want it to lead to them going to that region and then discover these notes on this Ilgobach once they get there and realize that, oh, if we kill this creature, we can free the 10 towns from having to do the sacrifice every new moon. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. So they have information. I'll have information on the spirit and how to weaken it to send it back to its native plane. All right. So that's, I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. There's this seance scenario in East Haven that I could do, but I'm reluctant to do it because there's a lot of subplots in East Haven and I'll never get to them all in the adventure. So I already have the subplot in this next scenario of the role-playing session where they get to role-play with the town by doing the celebratory dinner. Then there's a subplot of being attacked by the spirit of Jant that's coming back to them later. Then there's a subplot of discovering the Duragar out at the ferry, and that there's supply lines that are coming through here. And if they take out the Duragar outpost here, they'll shut down the supply line. So I think that's good. But that's more than enough for a single session. If I throw in the Arcane Brotherhood as well, then it'll just be a little bit much. So I need to create, so what I think I'm going to do instead, again, how you chain your adventures together is extremely important. It sets the pace. Like you go from combat, my previous sessions were exploration and survival. The session after that was heavy combat. I want this session to be sort of a clues, a Scooby-Doo adventure, or Mary Drew, or Nancy Drew, that's it. However you want to do it. So I have to set up these clues, and these are hard to find. I've repeated this advice in most of my previous sessions. When you have a clue-based adventure, you don't want the clues to be hidden. Like you have a critical path. In other words, these events have to chain together, and these pieces of information have to chain together to get the players from point A to point B. So don't hide any of that don't gate any of that behind roles where they might fail it or things like that. The best I think I can do here is if the player goes to a location, they'll just discover that information. So the info about the Arcane Brotherhood should be contained in the Sunblight Dwarves information. Now, I have no reason why this Arcane Brotherhood would be conspiring with the Sunblight Dwarves, but I need to add something here. So what can I think? The Arcane Brotherhood is providing the Chartland Syndicate they're working with because it'll give them free reign to do whatever they want to do, basically. So that's it. So they are working Chartland Brotherhood. Oh, on contract. So they're basically making money. If the Chartland Brotherhood will look the other way to enable their studies. So Chartland on contract for what? What are they supplying them with? So maybe they're supplying the Duragar with Chartland finders. I don't know, something like that. Magical Chartland finders. Maybe they're supplying the Chartland Syndicate, not Brotherhood. Sorry, CS Syndicate. I don't know what they would be trying. It's not important. Syndicate. With scrying. They're supplying with scrying. That's it. And other info on the Speakers Council. That's it. So what this will do is taking out the Chartland Syndicate, the relationship to the Arcane Brotherhood. This will blind them, so they won't be able to gain more information by the scrying that they're doing. This is good. So how do I? The game master is always faced with his challenges. How do I reveal that information in a session in an organic way that doesn't block the players from discovering it? So what I think with investigation techniques, it's very important to structure it that, like I said earlier, you don't gate any of the critical path information. In other words, the information chain that gets them from A to B is not gated behind a role. Although they have to go somewhere to discover it. They have to have some means to discover it. So if they just go to the Duragar, there'll be a journal there that has all of this information in it. That I'll figure out what exactly it is, but that's how they discover it. I will say what you should do. I stay away from should. Now, to say you should give all the information away doesn't mean you give every single bit of information away. Again, only the critical path information, only the minimal information necessary to get the players from A to B is something they should automatically discover when they get there. Whether that be a journal, a note in a journal, an item that can only have come from one location, a witness that knows that they were talking to somebody else. Any of those things should be automatic. But to give players a reason to have skills like investigate or history or nature, you should gate value add information behind those skills. So, so examples of that, and I'll have to think about what I have here is like the number of actual enemies at a location. That might be something they negotiate or do an investigation with. The types of magic used at a location, the types of enemies that they might face, whether they be undead or some special ability, the other connections that they might have, like who might be supporting conspirators to them, like to grant them additional information. All of that's value add information that isn't necessary to get players from A to B. But if they're using their skills to uncover this, if they're role playing to get more, so always hold back a good list of maybe 10 value add items of what they might get. So let me create some secrets of that. So Arcane Brotherhood is working with the CS to gain autonomy over the area and do what they want. Specifically, this is a adventure in this module, and it's the last one the players will hit before they hit 4th level, and then they'll be able to move more freely around the area. Up in Caer Dineval, Black Swords adventure. This is great. They're held up in a castle there with these creatures called the Knights of the Black Sword. I'll create some plot attachment there, but that's probably 2 sessions away. So this will be their basic stronghold. So the Chartland Syndicate's basically looking the other way. They've captured the speaker of that council of that town, and they're holding him prisoner to use this castle. So the Chartland Syndicate is essentially letting them do it. Autonomy over the area and do what they want, not want. Specifically, the castle at Caer Dineval. And the Brotherhood, they are supplying scrying and Chartland finders. Yeah, so that's essentially what they're doing. So I can remove this. I need something here. Yeah, that'll be, that's probably good enough. I probably don't need to make it more rich than that. But the players can find some of this. So give me some value add stuff. So the value add info, and the players will find all this out either through journals that they either recover in Targos if they unravel the Chartland Syndicate there, or journals that they might unravel with the dwarves if they go to the ferry to uncover that plot line. So value add info. They have the Arcane Brotherhood have Knights of the Black Sword at the castle, so they know the type of enemy that they'll have. They will only know what's the minimal information. So let's give them the minimal information is okay. min info is they are working with Chartland Syndicate, and they are in. Yeah, they are. So there's 3 pieces of information. They're at Ger Dinval. Not where or what, the players will have to investigate it, and that they are drawing magical power from whatever Orreal is doing. So I don't have to reveal that. That reveal will come once the players recover some information from that castle is doing. So what are the value add things? That there's one member of AB at the castle. I don't know how I'm going to reveal these, but we'll figure it out later. That they have the AB, actually the Knights of the Black Sword, KBS, I'll call them for now, that they have some demonic powers associated with, because that's what they have. So again, this is value add. This up here, what I'm doing is I'm giving the players the information they need to get from A to B. Minimum. They don't need any more than that to get to the next stage of the adventure. All of the rest of this is potential information they can find if they came up with some other clue. And I don't want to say give them a specific action. I don't want to say if they talk to this NPC, they get this piece of information. That's a module will often do that. I don't think that's useful because players, they attach to all kinds of things that they see or you just offhandedly mention as a GM that you never intended to become important, but players sometimes just mentally latch onto it. Roll with that. If that happens in your game, roll with that. The player is telling you, hey, I find this interesting. This is an area I want to investigate more, which is probably the most valuable piece of information you can ever receive as a GM. You want to hear what I'm interested in. So if a player comes out of left field to you and says, hey, I want to go investigate this, what is that? Sometimes I'm stymied because I just don't know what to do. So the way I mitigate for that is I put out a bunch of things they can find. And if at all, I can feed any of that information through that location, I will do it. If a player's throw me a bone, I will bite. Just like if a DM throws a player a bone with a plot line, you want them to bite. I don't think it's appreciated that works probably more strongly the other way around. If a player makes an expression of, hey, I am interested in something, it's by all means give them that. This applies to something I did last session with this magic shield. I posted this to Twitter a few weeks ago. This magical shield MacGuffin, this player plot line where I had one of the players, I came up with this plot line where their grandmother had been an adventurer and had lost a shield to a family sort of an enemy years ago, that this was part of their last adventure, the Cauldron Caves, was to recover that shield, this lost family heirloom of a shield. The reason, and the powers is it's a magical shield plus 1 to AC, and the player can cast Thunder Wave once per day, which knocks anyone else in front of them down and does area effect damage. Now, the reason I did that is because this player is really creative. They're always they don't understand the rules much, and they're not interested in the rules, which is no problem at all. They are always trying to describe, I want to knock people down and then hit them with my sword, and I have to kind of explain what actions are, which is no problem. But the important part of that is the player is communicating to me as a game master. I want to have more effect on the battlefield. I want to knock people around. I want to hold people at disadvantage, hold them down and stab them or whatever. They want something more narrative, more dynamic on the battlefield. So that led me to create this entire item over this thing they've been telling me that they want to do. So I'm essentially giving them a way to do a little bit of that with their shield. And so do that with plot lines. If players say, I want to talk to the blacksmith, and you've never, why would you talk to the blacksmith? And I never thought of that. Don't think that. Say, oh, great, this is my chance to say, well, let's say I have one of these clues like Knights of the Black Sword are at the castle. They can say, finally, business has been pretty good. I've had these strange knights coming in from Ger Dinval who have been requesting their repair to their armor and even plate armor, which is unusual. Maybe something like that can be a way that you release more information to the players. So one member of the Arcane Brotherhood is at the castle. The Knights of the Black Sword are working with the Arcane Brotherhood. What's other information? The Knights of the Black Sword I just said earlier it could be a number of people. So shared dinner vault. I don't know how many people are here, but it's a whole castle. So they have been requesting repairs, have been requesting lots of repairs and other supplies. Almost like a small army. That's important information for the player, right? What else have they been doing? Let's say let's say shared dinner vault called CD has gone quiet, right? So the townsfolk are basically, supply lines have been cut off. They're in the only people coming out of there. Only people have been Knights of the Black Sword. So that teases like there's because the plot line is they've kidnapped one of the town speaker and they're holding him hostage. So that and so that could be another one, right? Town speaker for shared dinner vault has not shown up to a council in several months. Now, one of the things I want to tie it to is the arcane. I've never said how to know that the Arcane Brotherhood. Oh, well, the players will find that out in minimum info. So something I want to tie it back to is one of the Arcane Brotherhood, when they showed up to East Haven, was being executed. Now, that's another thing I remixed. Again, I'll be posting all these remixes to my website, but it just didn't make sense to me that the players randomly show up as this Arcane Brotherhood member is being executed, and they are being, being burned. So first of all, why would they waste that kind of wood? So instead of burning, I had them drowning them in the lake. And second, East Haven is one of the towns that has to sacrifice someone's life at every new moon to maintain this sort of keep the blizzard from returning. So why would they waste a perfectly good execution on a random execution? Why wouldn't they execute this person during that new moon period? So that's what I set down for them. So the town themselves, they are executing prisoners for this rather than doing a lottery. It's not the Hunger Games there. So the players have seen that. They've seen a member of the Arcane Brotherhood executed for murder at the last new moon. So what information can I share about that? Maybe there's some of the AB member who was executed, their possessions have, what do they have? Some info. Ooh, I know what I'll do. Have info about. So why are I haven't answered the question as a DM of why is the Arcane Brotherhood even, and we have 3 minutes, so I'll wrap up here just in 3 minutes. I have not answered the question of why is the Arcane Brotherhood in that castle? Why are they there? So if they were able to get some of this person's possessions, I'm going to say that they have a special type of ritual implementation. Mysterious ritual stuff that has to be used at a fixed location, and that this material is about contacting the what do they call it? Ilgobach. Yeah, is about contacting the Ilgobach. Yeah, so that will be value add. So there's lots of different things they can discover. That's enough for now, I think. So they can discover how many individuals are at this castle. They can discover where they are. They can discover that the Arcane Brotherhood is trying to do a ritual there that requires a fixed location. They can discover that they've cut off the town speaker from that town, or they disappeared. So that's generally how you want mysteries to sort of progress and come out. Now I have to set up one last thing, and that's in this Targos thing. East Haven argument. I have to set up an argument over the Cauldron. So there'll be a celebratory period of a few days, and it depends on how long the players stay there, because this is why you never know as a GM. They might skin out of town right away. An argument will progress after a few days in East Haven over the Cauldron. Other towns want a shot at it. So a whole argument will progress. From there, there'll be a heist scenario. So if the players do nothing about Targos, Targos will try to steal the Cauldron, which is written into the adventure, which is good. To steal players will either be there when it happens, so they'll see it coming, head it off, or if they don't, I'll have to work out some ways to discover it's about to happen so they can rush back and prevent it or intercept those characters trying to steal it as they're trying to get it back to Targos. But that's for a future adventure. Certainly not going to be for next adventure. I think the important parts are, so I've got a solid one for next adventure. The next adventure setups are the role playing in the celebratory dinner. It is the return of Janth, the ghost, for revenge on the player character Nim. It is either the potential discovery of the Durgar dwarf holding up at the Frozen Fairy location and uncovering that plot line with the Chartland Syndicate, or they might choose to head to Targos. I don't think they will, but they might choose to head to Targos, since I teased it, and unravel and discover that plot line there. Now, I think that there's a possibility of other things. They might head back to their patron and return some magic items that they found. They might go on a buying spree. They might do a lot of things. Actually, I don't know. So I'm gonna have to. But having all of this sort of what's happening in the background, that lets me roll with the punches when these things come across. It lets me adjust that if let's say they wanted to follow up on a plot thread that from 5 sessions ago, where the players know that hidden in this other tomb is this mantle of the wild that they might recover, but they've not moved to get it. But that would bring them through Kier Duneval. Maybe they uncover the plot that way and they just run face first into it. So having this plot, what's going on in the background, so the world can sort of run on its own, is super important to a DM to allow the players to be flexible and pursue their own plots. All right, that's where I'm right at the top of the hour. I'm going to wrap it up here. This was more of a session design one, less on D&D theory crafting. But I hope you've enjoyed this stream. Thank you very much for attending. I've got a really good count, so thank you very much for people attending this stream. I hope you'll join me every week. I stream on YouTube and Twitch under Optional Rule every week on Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Time. We bring in all kinds of discussions around D&D, theory crafting, session preparation, game design, all kinds of things. I encourage you to go ahead and ask questions, talk to one another as we do this. There's a great way to bring out conversations on how people can get running games, add to their games, techniques they can think about adding, and all of that. So I really appreciate it. Again, this is a small little channel. I have a small little blog, so I hope you'll go ahead and follow me on all the social media. I most often post to Twitter during the week, and then I stream here, obviously, with some ad hoc streaming on other games as well, but I tend to talk about D&D even when I'm doing no stream. So give me a like, follow, subscribe, bell icon, all of the social media things. I really hope you'll do that. It would really help me out. Look to my blog at optionalrule.com for the remixes and other content that I'll be posting over time. So I hope you'll join me in future sessions as well. It's been great having you here. Thank you so much for all the follows, for all the support that I've gotten from the community. I look forward to next week. So thank you very much, everybody. And that is it. I'm out. Until next week, we'll wrap it up there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.